Okay, everybody, welcome to Money Never Sleeps, episode 12 with a mostly recovered OG, Pindar, Van Arman, Batsoupyum, and Artifaction2. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this show I think I've been trying to get this together for 6+ months, and I think this is a really unique group. We're all in similar stages of our lives, and I'm excited to have some such great collectors on the show, and Pindar, obviously great collector and great artist as well. So I want to start with, how come you guys have chosen not to dox? And Pindar, what do you think?
That's right to the point.
Yeah, let's start chatting. Why not? Because it's something I wrestled with, and at first I didn't dox out of safety fears, but then eventually found that to have kind of personal relationships, it was important for me. But I'd love your take on the importance or not importance of doxing.
I'll go first here.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Artie.
Yeah, no. So I'll give you my reasons. I always kind of looked at Artifaction as, kind of the brand I was building. Art meets, faction. And faction specifically referring to really the kind of the group of people. I say in Noble all the time, I'm like, what I'm trying to put together is this fanatical group of art collectors that are here for the digital revolution, but then also, people I can have a beer with, right? I can sit down and have a conversation with, which means there's some commonalities in just like our approach for life, fitness, challenges, family. I have kids, I have 4 kids, and, multiple businesses, sit on a lot of boards, with a lot of charities. And but at the end of the day, as you get older, you start seeing that it feels like there's less and less people you can really sit down with and connect with, that, kind of understand those kinds of tribulations and trials you have of being a father and being a business guy, and somebody that also likes to challenge themselves physically and that kind of stuff. So I'd always looked at Artifaction as more as a kind of the brand. Listen, in the next probably 30 to 60 days or so, I'm doxing because my partner Matt and I are going to do a podcast, so much for the similar reasons. I'm going to have my face out there anyway. I will say, OG, that I have the same concerns as you, that it's just like I'm entering this new community as well. I didn't know what I was doing a few years ago when I entered, and I love the idea of being a non. It just like, listen, my name, my background, all that stuff, that doesn't mean anything. It's where my heart is, and the type of person that I show up to be every day, like for humankind. That's what matters, right? So the name doesn't matter. None of the accolades or none of that stuff matters. So that's why I love it.
You created it from scratch, nothing you done. I like that element too, where like it's not who your parents were or where you grew up or how you look, nothing. It's what do you do every day, day in, day out.
There's I only probably have maybe 5 or so really great friends. I would say great friends that know I do this digital art thing, and they know what I do. But it's only those friends that actually have art collections or are passionate about art that that even know that. So yeah.
Yeah, my answer is not nearly as good as that. I would say yeah, I should have gone first because now I'm going to sound like an asshole. But I would say 2 reasons. One, there's just too many bad actors in this space, and I place a very high value on not having to deal with bullshit, and like if I'm just getting fished and calls and like people trying to steal my stuff from me, it's just like a waste of my time, and I just don't want to deal with it. So that's number one. So plus there's a security aspect to it. But number 2 is along the lines of what Artie said, which is I this is more for selfish reasons though. Like I have a life outside of this that I enjoy very much. I have people I love that are close to me nearby. I have a lot of hobbies and things like that. And it's like, I really like the aspect of keeping my Web3 life and persona separate from my personal life, just because I place a very high value on the things I do outside of Web3 that frankly help me stay sane when I come back here. So yeah, those are the 2 main reasons. I doxed many
that you love outside of this.
Yeah, I'm big into mountain biking. I do a lot of stuff in the outdoors. I play, unfortunately, still play video games. I'm kind of a gamer. Stuff like that. Where I travel a bunch. There's just other stuff going on, and I'd rather not
What's
have
your
those
favorite
two
game?
That was actually
in the
Bats. That
blend.
was actually a good answer.
Yeah, that's
That was
great.
an interesting answer. Yeah, because I mean, like, I'm always surprised because I always try and get to the bottom of why someone's a non. And there's really good reasons, and then there's obviously, like sometimes there's bad actors, there's really bad reasons. But one of my favorites is I don't want to mention the anon, but they're in the science community, and their reputation means everything because they do scientific research, and they just say they can't have someone associating their scientific research with crypto. I get it. I get it. We all love crypto, obviously, and everyone we know loves crypto, and we get it, and we see it's the future. But there's a lot of people that think it's a scam, and it hurts your reputation in the real world. The real world.
Yeah, no, it's true. I stopped saying I do NFTs. I just say I'm in digital art.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
Like, I do think people, if you tell them NFTs now, a lot of people think you're a scammer.
I told you.
Yeah, I don't mind. Go ahead, Pindar. I'm sorry.
No, I tried to rent a studio in downtown. Like there's a hipster district, and I tried to rent a studio, and I wanted to have my robots running and just me there 24/7, and everything was going great to get the rental. But as soon as I said NFTs, they started throwing obstacles at me to the point that they wanted 5 years ahead of me. We pay 5 years of rent ahead of time, which was basically we don't want you to rent here anymore.
Yeah,
and it was all because of NFTs. Yeah,
It doesn't. I don't mind owning it. I don't mind owning the NFT label, but I will tell you a funny story. I was at the airport one time, and I was flying to San Francisco for a crypto conference. And while I was sitting in the airport, I was sitting there thinking, this is, call it like 2018, 2019. I was like, I hope I don't run into anyone I know, because I just don't want to. Like, this is like crypto has a stigma now, but back then it was. I mean, the stigma was much larger 5 years ago, and so. Of course, like this woman I know who lives nearby me, who I find very attractive, walks up to me and says, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Good to see you." And I think, oh boy. And she goes, "Oh, where you going?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to San Francisco. I'm on this flight." She's like, "Oh, me too." And I'm like, "Oh shit." And she says, "Well, what are you doing in San Francisco?" And I look at her and I say, "Well, I'm going to this crypto conference." And she looks at me with this funny look, and she's like, "Oh." And then she says, "By the way, your fly's down." I thought I could not possibly look like a bigger dumb shit than I do right at this moment in this airport. So Pindar, I totally get what you're saying about the stigma attached to NFTs. I've been there.
But I mean, now the wisdom has come out of this conversation already. It's like, I take notes during these meetings, and it's okay. Artifaction is now not doxing. because honestly, sometimes I'm a squirrel brain. Like, I go 1,000 different directions. That's why I always have a good CEO run my companies and stuff. But sometimes I don't sit down and think things through, because I'm very passionate. I just wear my heart on my sleeve, and but hearing Bats reason through this, it's helping. Listen, I'm not saying 100%, but helping me reason through it. It's for sure 100%. And and I do, like I say, I think it is honorable to be to be anon. It's I love what it stands for. I mean, I think more bad actors have shown themselves in our space with faces these days than that are anon. Really, when you think about it, with SBF and the whole crew, right? So.
Yeah, no, they don't even care. I mean, they're shameless, and it doesn't matter if they're not. But I think I don't know if I've shared this with you, Steve, but I do worry as an artist if I've ruined myself by digging so deeply into crypto artists, even identifying as a crypto artist. I worry that I've ruined myself in the traditional art world. Like, I have some curators that don't take me seriously anymore, that used to take me seriously.
You almost just doxed me. Use my real name in the dox discussion.
No. Yeah. So no, it's always sorry, OG. So it is a concern, but I mean, I'm all in, and I'm not turning back. So and that's partially the reason for that is, like, I tried to make it in the traditional art world for 20 years, right, and didn't get any traction until crypto art. So I'm not about to forsake the crypto art traction for the traditional art world because I don't know, it's ridiculous. So I'm in a weird space as an artist, and obviously the reason to be totally open, use my full name from the beginning and my full identity. There's pluses and minuses. So I hear
trade-offs, and I think the good news is, as you said, Artie, I think at the end of the day, what's wonderful about this space is, look, you hear so much about the negative, but if you're a good actor and you generally are like straightforward, we all make mistakes and so on. But actually, the transparency, whether you're a non or not, it's just one piece. Everybody else sees what you do, like what we do on Twitter and Discord and our wallets. And so I do think there is a rare ability to truly get to know humans in this space in a much clearer way because everything's transparent. So even if you don't have your real name, I think the idea that you earn your reputation here from scratch, and it can be reinforced by people who know you. So I think you can actually end up in a sort of more trustworthy position. Switching gears for a minute, another thing Pindar and I discussed a lot is like, it sounds like this discussion is a sort of part of it is, what does it mean to you to be like free and successful? One of the things I know is many people, equate money with being free or some other things. Whereas to me, having control of my time and what I do is my number one definition of whether I'm successful or not. Like, do I have control over, because I know many people who make a lot of money, but they have no control over their life. So I just would love each of your takes or thoughts on that idea, because it's something as I've gotten older, I think about a ton, is like, what will allow me to have the life I want rather than be stuck in a life that I'm sort of forced to live in.
Yeah, you take that first, Bats.
Oh boy, that's a great question. Thanks, Artie. I appreciate that. That was very polite of you. I would put it this way. I would. I lived in New York City for a long time. I worked in the financial services industry, and a while back, I did not grow up in New York area, and I decided it was time to leave. And I had 2 job offers when I left that would have put me in a much higher echelon of financial success than I'm in right now. And I turned them both down and left. And it was probably, if not one of the top 3 best decisions I've ever made in my life, because once you reach a certain threshold of money, and this is not a big number for me. I don't have like a huge number. Like I have this friend who lives by me who's from Spain, and I asked him one time, I said, "Hey, what's your number?" And he said, "Oh, it's $5 million." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And he goes, "Well, I'm never going to get there." I was like, "Wow, that's a really defeatist attitude. Like, what are you talking about? Why will you never get there?" And he goes, No, it has nothing to do with that. It's just like, because once I hit 1 million, I'm just going to say, fuck it, close enough. So that's kind of the attitude I took, is that I got, and it wasn't $1 million. It was enough to make me happy and be able to do the things I want. And looking back on it, it was like one of the best decisions I ever made. So the answer to your question is, I don't define success by the amount of money in my bank account. I define success by my happiness meter. How happy am I? Am I doing the things I want to do? Again, this gets back to the discussion why I don't dox, because if the moment this starts infringing on the things that make me happy, and this is one of the things that make me happy, but there's a lot of things that make me happy, then that's the moment where I've made a mistake and I need to rewire how my setup is working, because it's just not like, I have very high walls on the things that make me happy. And when things start messing with that, I get really agitated and I hit the reset button and it's time to start over. So, and that has something to do with money. You cannot get there without some minimum level to achieve, that type of happiness, but it's not like $1 billion. I can tell you that. I know a lot of people with a lot of money who I left behind in New York who are absolutely miserable. And I've been miserable ever since I left.
Well, I mean, you were in finance, so was I. That's true. It's interesting to hear you. The other thing on the money side is, it's not always the income. For me, like having been through divorce, it's the costs, having fixed uncuttable costs, whether you're in a business already where something's uncuttable and and it doesn't change, to me, that's a very tough position to be in that I've been in and soon will be reducing out of. But I think the key too, if we're talking money, is on the cost side. Part of what controls how much money you need is have reasonable, cuttable costs as much in your control. Don't be an idiot and get divorced twice and have super high fixed costs. So that's an interesting takeaway. And I'm with you 100%. There's a ton of people in finance with tons of money who are super miserable. The only other thing I wanted to add is I have the exact same thing. Like a lot of people, the minute I sell something or it becomes like a job and I have to do it for money, it can take something I love that I did every day, whether it's gardening or art or music, and it immediately turns it miserable.
Yeah.
So I have some kind of like weird thing where if I have to do it for someone else, game over. If I choose to do it for myself.
Yeah. Oh, right on. As an artist, the same thing. I love it that I'm living the dream, right? In that, as an artist, I finally have enough to just coast, and I could not sell another piece of art for the rest of my life, and I'm fine because I've kept my, I'm not fabulously wealthy, but I've kept my costs down. And the other secret is I'm old, so I don't have much left to live.
Like the rest of us on this call, bro.
So it's like, but it's the ultimate freedom as an artist, not worrying about sales, and it's the only time I've ever been happy, actually. And OG, you're right, man. Is when you're selling art, it's sometimes not fun or it's when you have to worry about that next drop, it becomes work and it becomes stressful. So that's where I'm at, and lucky to be here.
Already? Any thoughts?
Well, yeah. Listen, I concur with all of it. I've many wealthy friends that are super unhappy because they chase money, and listen, there's only one person can be the richest person in the world, but it's when money can create freedom for you to be happy, and that's all you need. Stacking more adds more complexities, especially if you have a mindset of just acquiring things and stuff. And it's the reason X copy slave is my PFP. Is that the things that you own you. That's that statement from Tyler Durden in Fight Club. And it's such a beautiful statement because and listen, I've climbed my way from living in a trailer and living in my car and starting a company with a couple $1,000 that's done billions in sales to even, and actually having the joy is just in the day-to-day doing what you love, right? But I will say, there was a time 10, 12 years ago where I was chasing money and I thought money was going to be the thing that made me happy. And like this end result of like selling a company or whatever it would be the thing that would make you happy. And it's actually the opposite. When you sell the company, it's like sending a kid off to college. And it's like also, it's not like that. It's even worse. It's like sending a kid to college that doesn't want to come see you. So you spent all this time building this thing, and I'm happy. I'm in a space now, in a place now, in a mental space now that like money, I just don't care about it. Like it's, and I have created wealth, but I don't chase dollars anymore. I chase, freedom, and I chase, time, with my kids and that kind of stuff. So I 100% agree with that. Like it's, so many people chase it and they believe like once I get there, I'll be happy, and just like that generic statement. But you have to have a deeper meaning about why you're chasing it. And if it's early on, I wish I would have done this earlier. If early on you could be like, listen, set and define exactly what it is that you want money to create for you, and you find that you actually don't need as much as you kind of thought you needed, right? So same answer, same exact answer.
So a question that's popping into my mind, hearing how you all have this, like, this outside life outside of Web3, but you two are some of the most like busy or like, productive, like, with Noble Gallery, with your involvement, Bats, with 6529 Fund. I can't imagine how you're not spending full time. So my general question is, what is the percentage split of time you spend in Web3 versus time you do the outside interests? I'm just fascinated by that because I would assume it'd be 100% Web3.
Yeah, probably for me, 50-50. It's maybe 60-40 Web3 if you count Twitter time, so which is for me, it's all Web3, right? So, but maybe not as balanced as I would like, but also it's where my passion is right now too. I'm not active in any of my companies, and this is where my passion is. My passion is disrupting the old model, because I've been a part of the old model, and I know it from top to bottom. I know all the gatekeeping. I know everything that goes on. I'm an expert at understanding everything that goes on at auction houses and everything, and it's dirty. And like I don't like what I was enveloped in when I was a collector and being involved as a collector. But you see what Web3 brings and what it brings to artists and to collectors. It's the thesis behind it all is exactly why I'm dumping all my time into that, because I'm passionate about it. In Noble, I mean, I'll never take $1 personally from Noble. I could care less. The idea for Noble is to create a community, like I said, I can have a beer with, that's also, doing as best as we can to educating people about collecting art and about getting to know artists, and the reason and how they build pieces and all that kind of stuff. So it's where my heart is right now. I mean, I love running and I love doing all the other stuff, but I would say my passion project is 1000% Web3 digital art.
That comes through. What about you, Bats?
Yeah, a very similar answer, but again, I'm maximizing my happiness quotient. And if I die, my view in life is generally, if I die with $1 left, then it was $1 too much. It's like, why I don't need a whole pot of gold buried with me in a tomb under the Great Pyramids of Egypt or something. It's like, that's not why I'm doing all this. I attended a really interesting conference early on in the web, and Jerry Yang was speaking there. And I gave this example last week. I'll say it again. And Jerry Yang was the founder of Yahoo. And his quote about the internet was, and this again, very early days, was, "This is a brand new thing. Leave more than you took." And I thought, you know what? That's not a great quote for the internet. That's a great quote for life. Yeah. And that's kind of how I'm approaching things. It's like, my general philosophy is leave more than I took. So the long-winded answer to your question is really, like, with 6529, I'm everything I'm doing with 6529, I more or less would want to be doing anyway, right? Like, it's an interesting sort of job, because it's not really a job, because I have a huge personal collection that I like collecting on my own. I spend hours and hours and hours, interacting with the space and speaking with artists like Pindar and others. And it's just, again, on the fun quotient scale, it's super high for me. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. Again, I like to do other things too, but this one is like, top 2 or 3 for me of things that just pique my interest, are intellectually stimulating, or sort of fulfill my mission of life to leave more than I took. I feel like I am making a difference here and helping people. Hopefully I am. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it.
How do you guys identify artists? Like, I know, Bats, you watch people for quite a while before buying. Typically is my third-party observation. Bats, how do you guys approach? My collecting style changed a lot. Last year, I did 11,968 transactions and lost money, as you might expect one would, doing that many transactions. This year, I'm laser focused, and I've done just much more targeted purchases. I say it here. I think reality is what it is. Oh, we just lost Artie. Reality is what it is. He was on his phone. And our feelings about it matter to us, but step one is to understand what reality is. And I think if you look at the data, both in contemporary art and in publicly available blockchain data, most of the volume is accounted for by 100 artists and collectors or less. So I've become much more laser focused, and I believe in what Grant said. You can't separate art and artists. So I know Artie does this, Pats, I know you do this, and I obviously do this. I spend part of every single day talking to artists. Hey, pal, we lost you. Oh, is that a beef broth going?
Oh, there's a beef.
Yeah. Deceive me, or is that a beef broth going?
No, what happens is you get a call that comes in on your iPhone, and then it goes out. The sound goes out. So yeah, sorry about that.
I was just saying, so we're talking about artist identification. I was just saying I'm much more laser focused this year, and I do almost no transactions, just super laser focused, super bet on artists. Can't separate art and artists. Can't separate collector and collection, I think, too, but that's separate. And so we were getting into I said my observation of Bats is I know he'll have like artists on his radar, and he has, generally it appears to me as a third party, he'll watch people for a while before making moves. So I just was wondering, artist identification, what do you look for in artists you collect? Any comments on how your collecting is now or how it's changed or what you think?
It's a great question. I now want to have a conversation with the artist and, kind of get to know them and talk it through. There was a year plus ago, the DGen, like you just buy and then, maybe start the conversation after because you're attracted to the piece, which I'm not against. I still do that from time to time, but I feel like it's a more meaningful relationship when you reach out first and you ask about the piece. I have several artists, dozens right now where they've got art out there. And I'll tell them, actually, this is what I did with Grant. My very first piece with Grant, Grant Yoon was Pool. And I'd waited out like 10 different pieces. And it's like, hey, it's still just not the right piece. I want to have something. And I said, listen, I'm also prepared that when that comes up, I understand your prices are going up. I'll be prepared to pay that price but I want to wait on the right piece. Right. So that was that was, I think, maybe the trigger in that. I should be doing this with all artists, that have that conversation and let them know I love their work, get into that conversation, but then not be so degen, buy because it's on the market. Right. So I think, and I think that's super critical for the space too, and just the learning of the space too, because not that we want to emulate anything that happens in the real world, but like just honoring this whole artist collector, kind of relationship. That's the right path, I believe, in acquiring art. So
I guess I've definitely evolved in how I think about this over time. I mean, my view is that no matter who is, the personality is behind the art, great art will stand on its own forever, right? I just don't I think people put a lot of stock into how someone acts on Twitter and if they show up every day and all that. I mean, I bought a piece last week from a photographer named Jord Hammond, who is almost never on Twitter and has some of the best photography I've ever seen in Web3. And it's like, I didn't need to talk to Jord to know it was a great piece, right? I mean, it was phenomenal piece of art. And so I feel like if there's artists on this call, I almost feel like, wow, I really need to show up every day. And I can kind of see this hamster on a wheel mentality where if I don't get on the wheel, I'm going to be like fall to the wayside and I won't make any sales. And I would say like great art will stand on its own. So that's number one. Number two is I think there has to be some consistency there. Like, my kids, I have two kids, they make fun of me and it's like, every once in a while I'll win. I'll beat them at like Monopoly or something like that. And they'll just tell me, hey, even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. And it's like, you kind of have to apply a similar principle here where it's like, I think every artist in this space has it in them to make like an unbelievable piece once or twice, but it's that level of consistency. And I think Grant, to Artie's point, is a really good example of that because he's changed styles 2 or 3 times. And every time I see him post something on Twitter, it's simply better than the last thing I saw. It's pretty amazing. I mean, Pindar, you have this sort of ability to evolve your art in the same style that you've chosen. And it almost seems like everything just keeps getting better and better. I own one of your one-on-ones, and like the stuff I've seen come out recently, I'm like, oh man, I'd like to get that too. It's like, and I typically only buy like 1 or 2 pieces from the same artist to try and spread it around, and it's really fun to watch. But I agree with Artie. It's fun also to speak with the artists and get to know them and the personality. But I'm trying harder not to put too much stock into that because actually, I think at the end of the day, what you're owning is the art first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree. And same here, Bats. So if I see the piece I'm immediately connected with, like I can't punch the 4 digits on the ledger quick enough, right? I mean, 100%, because then the conversation's not even needed. Like it's for sale and I love it and it's going to the vault. It's like a no-brainer.
So I'm going to take, it's interesting. I increasingly as I said, like the world is what it is, whether I like it that way or not. And my observation is I have gone where I do think when you buy art, having watched what's happened to many artists who disappeared or flooded supply, you're basically buying into an artist ecosystem and how they. I apologize. My dog's like barking like crazy.
You want me to fill some time? Okay. I wanted to add, I have a weird thing. OG
There he goes.
He's gone.
See ya, OG. See ya, man.
Oh, here you go.
She was out on a walk and you see this little puffball.
Aw.
So sorry about that. That's
All right, cool.
apologies. No, so I was just gonna say, so given what I said before, that unfortunately, like this space, fewer artists are gonna last, and you're taking a long-term bet. You know, over time, the more pieces out there, the more artists, collectors can impact their ecosystem. I do think, like, I like to know I'm dealing, if I'm investing in something and focusing on it, that it's like you say over time, the great artists, I agree, like Grant, Pindar, so on, they'll evolve and they can read the space. And so I think, to me, actually, I've probably gone a lot more where if I don't believe in the artist, it's very hard for me to buy the work. And when I say believe in the artist, what I mean is that they're somebody that I want to be here. You were saying, Artie, a lot about building a community of people you want to hang with and have beer with. And that's, I'm about that. And people have to be dependable over time. And many people aren't in life. So I think for me, a lot of the game is more and more focusing on artists I think I believe in for the long term and would rather make bigger investments in fewer artists, which I wish wasn't the case. Like last year, I machine gunned everywhere, you know, like 11,648 transactions. But so, and as I've gotten to know some of these, and I honestly feel like, you know, all of us on this call have the pleasure of, and Pindar obviously has one, but of talking to some of these incredible artists. And I will tell you, I want to say this correctly, I don't mean, but sometimes you meet these artists and like your head explodes. You know, conversations with Pindar, or in an Uber with Sam Spratt, or Die with the Most Likes, or Hasty. There's just people, you start talking to them, and they're just like, you know, and I'm not a big sports fan, but if you think about like the NBA, the people in the NBA are all like the best, but there's a few who are so much better and stand out so much that they're, and so honestly, I do find, and I support all like artists and buy a lot of art, but I do increasingly find knowing the artist, believing in them, and believing that they're going to keep showing up over some reasonable period does matter a ton to me. So I'm probably on the less popular side of that now, but that's where I'm at.
No, I'm all artists, OG. It's for me, it's like most important thing is the artist.
Yeah.
Like, even their output isn't that important. And
Yeah.
But really good artists are both.
It's rare, very great art just stands on its own with no collector. If you look at every successful artist, there's always a collector that was a key part of them and supporting them. And I know you two, all you have done that. And Pindar on the artist side, you supported artists. It always has to have a champion too. So yeah. I'm not as sure.
I'll give you a quick, possibly counterexample that I don't think is a counterexample. Yeah. Right. But like, let's talk about like a lot of money, right? I mean, a lot of was a phenomenal artist. Unfortunately, passed away last year. Doesn't show up on Twitter anymore. Doesn't show up in Discord. Doesn't do all the things like that. And I think happens to have some of the best crypto art out there and will have it out there for many, many, many years. So, you know, the tragic story, unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But I also think it's an example of how he made great, great art that will stand the test of time. And he doesn't need to be in DMs. He doesn't need to have a Discord. He doesn't need to show up on CT every day. Like, so I just want to point that out. Like, he's just the art is standing on its own. So I do think there's an aspect of both artists being a part of it, but I also think there's a counterexample where you can point to people like Money Alata, who, you know, that art will always be grail to me, at least, and I think to the community. It seems that way, at least.
And I don't want to say I'm advocating for like being on Twitter. I don't think you have to do that either. I just meant I do think ultimately for me, just buy a piece of art I see once and love versus buying art from an artist that I believe in and love. The latter case is always a better one for me.
Yeah, and also the top artists are both, right?
Yeah.
That, even with Money Alata, it stands on its own. But also, he was an artist, man. He would collaborate with any artist that asked him. Didn't matter how small the artist was, even though he was a mega artist. So he was an artist. He was a collector's artist. While he was alive, he was like, I always thought of him as like, man, there's other artists I emulate, and I would look at him and say, what is he doing right? Because he's doing some right, and he was definitely an influence on me, especially with the collab stuff. But that being said, it's both, and I think OG, you just said there's like this. There's even in the NBA, there's superstars. The superstars are both. They mastered the game of making gorgeous aesthetics, and they've also mastered getting their story out and getting people interested in their story. And that's. I
want to turn it over to you guys to ask some questions. I mean, I can keep going, but.
Well, no, I just want to add something. What you said is, and I subscribe to that, OG. I will say that there's so many artists in the space. I mean, there's so many artists. And what I like to do is I like to say, who's going to be edgy and have a good construct with protecting their brand. And you mentioned like Die With The Most Likes, and the flea market he did, which as soon as I went down, I just said, it's the most brilliant display for who we are as a cultural community and NFTs and digital art, and it reminded me of, these greats in history that said, fuck the system. You get, like, Banksy is a very good example, but like Duchamp like was blackballed by everybody of his independent artist society. Nobody wanted anything to do with him. Salvador Dali, what he did at the World's Fair, like they think differently beyond the art too. And I like understanding the construct of, because when you understand the construct, you can't predict, but you can get a pretty good key about who this person's going to be as it relates to like the longevity of their career, as opposed to just maybe blindly saying, wow, I mean, like it was just a one-off great piece of art that I love right now. So you can't do that for everybody because it's hard to have conversations with everybody. But when I see, artists like the thing I see with, with like Grant's a hustler, and he's hustled his way into the trad art, where like pretty much every institution now, from the auction houses for sure, down to Avant and MoMA and his one man stuff that he just did last night. He's hustling his way into getting his work out there. So you see that it's not necessarily the construct, but it's just like it's the work ethic of saying, this is on me. I've got to go do the work to actually see that I'm going to be known.
Title, yes.
Yeah. Ari, you made me think of something because you mentioned dye, and I see your beef broth goes, and I know you minted some beef broth goes. How did you hear about that mint? Because it sold out in an hour. I mean,
yeah, it was somebody on site. Oh, it was Uncle Pennybags, and he's out of our space now.
Because I told him
so was you, and I was thinking it had to have originated from you, right? And I think it was actually, yeah. And it was
Pindar's
late night.
was the same as yours, by the way. When we were standing there, I was standing next to Pindar, and Pindar said the exact same as you. He's like, "This is a fucking historic."
Yeah, I knew immediately. I remember I was telling everyone at that party, I was like, "This is going to 2 to 3 ETH immediately," which I was wrong, but it went to 1 ETH immediately.
Yeah, that's
too good. And that's an example of where the artist is so important. One of the weird things, and I don't know how to describe this, is when I see a collection, I ask myself, is this the only artist that could have put out this collection? Like, is this the only artist that could have put out this collection? And does it match their worldview? And
that's a great point. Yes.
With Dye, this was it. This was his worldview in a collection. I was like, I think this will represent him forever. This is like his social.
Yes, 100%. And not everybody, flea markets, but look at the construct of that. And, I like my artists to be a little crazy and a little eccentric. And, I mean, I'm telling you, it's funny. You go look at, even the great sold today in trad art. I mentioned this guy a lot. One of his pieces, his name is Robert Nava. And Robert Nava was a classically trained Masters of Fine Arts Yale. But he paints these, these figures now that looks like your 5-year-old could do. However, your 5-year-old can't paint like that. And especially if your 5-year-old was trained in every single style, hand to canvas, 1 inch away, brush stroke, learning Renaissance, the style of the Renaissance masters, to then learn art that way, earn an MFA at Yale, which basically cements you anywhere you want to go. You can go be a professor. You just can do anything with art. To then basically say, fuck that. I want to go listen to techno music and start painting after midnight every night, and wake up at noon the next day. That's his thing, and that's what he does. And I love stories like that because it tells me, like, this is who you are now telling the world is your career. And Diet does the best job at, I think, in our space, is saying, it's like the fuck capitalism, fuck establishment. I'm going to put out work every day and not worry about minting every piece, but I'm just going to hustle my ass off, put out work every day. And then also, you pair that with the flea markets, and then just the get-togethers at the dive bars where you can't breathe 5 minutes when you walk in because of the smell of the smoke. It's brilliant. I mean, it's true brilliance in our space right now. So, and I hate saying that with anybody. I hate saying that with anybody I have a big collection of. I've got like a big collection, and the thing I don't like to do, I actually hate doing it, is I hate talking about the artists I've collected. Because what I don't want to send is a false signal as like an influencer, and I'm trying to pump this, because honestly, I could care less if every single piece of art I own in my vault goes to zero. I don't care, right? I mean, I really don't. And that's a privileged place to be in, but I bought it because I love it and I want to support the artists.
That's Die right there. That's the piece, the canvas for my piece. This is when we got the glory hole. That's the purchasing of the glory hole.
Oh my God.
Pretty God. This dude, we pulled up. Bats, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, this dude, I swear to God, I roll up with the transient guys. And Chris says to the guy, hi, we have an artist doing a show tonight, and we need a massive glory hole. And I swear to God, that dude says, you've come to the right place.
As it turns out, I have one. Yeah,
come to the right place. That was.
I probably would have walked away at that point, but
he claimed he was on all kinds of drugs, and I can tell you he was fully fucked up. I don't know what he was on, but he was. Anyway, it was a really crazy.
No business like the art business. Like they say that about you. There's no. That was I missed. That's the one thing I really missed about Marfa. I wish I went on that trip with you, but I was at the flea market, which was awesome. And
I can. Artie was complaining in 5 minutes. I had to leave that too. It was too fucking loud.
Marfa's in the middle of nowhere. I wish I could have made it as well. Ironically, months before, I'd ridden a bike right through Marfa. On this thing I did with my buddies. We rode a bike across America, and we literally rode right just north of Marfa.
Wow.
And but I never would have. It's like getting there it's not a hassle, but it's you're not flying to New York City and then
it's a massive, enormous fucking hassle. Full day of travel driving, and when you go from El Paso, I was there. OSF was driving because he was like training for his fight. And we got pulled over on the inside of America, Texas, and like car searched, and he didn't have his fucking papers. It was a real nightmare to get to. So,
oh my gosh,
yeah, it was fucking crazy. That's what's on your mind these days.
Oh boy. All right, I have a question for you all. This is something I've kicked around for a while, and I'm not sure the answer, so I'm curious what you all think. How important is early provenance for an artist? For example, if I owned Pindar's Genesis, does anyone care 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now? Because they don't in the trad art world. No one cares in the trad art world. Nobody talks about Picasso's Genesis or anything like that.
Right.
But we do talk about it around here because we can actually verify it on blockchain. So how important is it?
I love this question.
This is a good one. And I'm all about
I just had this discussion yesterday in the context of PFPs. I fucking love this question, Bats. My answer is first in crypto has enormous value, and here's the evidence. CryptoPunks, Squiggles, fucking, I think first in a thing where provenance was the first like kind of asset one of many assets it provided. But so my view is enormous, and I try to get. So I don't know. You're right. It doesn't matter, but a lot of stuff that doesn't matter in traditional art has to do with how I think Artie. I love how Artie talks about it. It's a big fucking scam, right? Like they create fabricated There's a whole world. They provided some services that hopefully will be provided in this new world, like market making and so on. But in a world of transparency, a lot of that bullshit that they use falls apart. And I think provenance and first mints, the evidence is they're valued super highly in crypto. That's my view.
Yeah, think about it this way: it's rarity, and like in the traditional art world, they almost fake rarity, and like they'll manufacture rarity. But there's one rarity you can't manufacture in the crypto art world, and that's first. And so,
that's a good point.
And so what's interesting is, and I love first. By the way, you guys probably know this. I had X Copies Genesis.
Yeah.
I still continue to have Claire Silver's Genesis. I have Ann Spalter's Genesis. I have a lot of Genesis pieces just because I target them. It's one of my collecting things, and I just think it's important because it just shows. It also shows like how forward thinking. It's evidence of how forward thinking an artist is. If they minted back in 2018, 2019, that shows that they saw ahead of everyone else how important this was. If you have a CryptoPunk, I immediately have respect for you because you saw how important either you did one of three things. What's that?
How many of you have 9 like Bats?
Yeah, Bats has a lot. I've only ever had 3, and I only have 1 now, but I can't get rid of it because it's like it's that badge that I was here early.
Definitely matters.
And I don't, but you're right because no one. It's almost like in the traditional art world. Here's the counterpoint. The counterpoint is it's the best work, not the first work, and of course the first work isn't the best work. And also like even with stuff like Grammys, best new artist. Best new artist doesn't go to a new artist their first year. It's after an artist breaks out. So an artist can be 8 years in the scene, and they have a breakout album, which is their 4th album. Yeah. So it's.
Do you think it's important?
If I'm talking with my bags, I do. I own quite a few Genesis pieces, and
we're true seekers here. I know.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it. I feel like I agree with Pindar. I think the artists who were here early, their Genesis pieces like matter a lot. I mean, our team was drooling over the first mint on Super Rare, which is a really good AI output from Robbie Barrett. And things like that I think could be really valuable. I'm not sure if this is not a statement about the art by any means, but I'm just not sure if anyone's going to care about the Genesis piece for, I don't know, a really good artist who showed up in 2023.
Top 100 artists 10 years from now, or top 50 artists. Like you have to be a top artist for it to matter. But if you get an artist, it's going to be.
And even then, I'm not sure it will. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. That's why I asked the question. I genuinely go back and forth on this, and I just don't know. I think there's really good arguments on both sides. There's no argument whatsoever in the trad art world. So at least we have provenance, verifiable provenance on our side here to add to the argument. So, but I'm genuinely not sure.
Well, here's the tricky part, Bats. It's like for the crypto artists, we all became artists because of the crypto art. So our Genesis pieces are actually Genesis pieces. But now, like, imagine a traditional artist comes in and does a Genesis piece. Is it really a Genesis piece? Because they've already sold 100 pages of galleries. It's not really. Exactly. It's not the same thing for new artists or artists showing up today. But it was back in the day, and they're really cool pieces of art, and I love them.
I did a bunch of buying, which this made me think. So what I did for a while on Tez, which you can argue the XTZ ICO is so shit that's destroyed all value, but the pieces have moved in Tez, is buy Tez pieces from breakout ETH artists before they ran. Yes. That was a strategy I used. It was sort of a derivative of this in a broader sense, which was like, okay, if somebody's doing well and you could get some of their pieces on Tez much, much, much reduced, it's a good bet. It sort of has done well as a bet, but that's starting from early-ish 22. So I don't really know if it's like a robust ongoing thesis, but that's where I did sort of, and on ETH, if I could get somebody's Genesis, like without paying a ton more, I would get it. So in practice, that's how I've handled it, is buy Tez or buy like something, for an artist who's doing well.
Yeah, it's kind of a flex, right? It's showing how you can predict the future. If you find an artist and you get their Genesis piece and the artist blows up, you've just showed everyone you have taste.
The question is, I can try to buy the Genesis for more.
Yeah.
How much do you guys think if the X copy Genesis piece, which is, I think most people would agree, it's not a character piece. If you haven't seen it, but it's really good. Like all of this work. But I'm just curious if that X copy Genesis piece,
you mean
which is number, if it went to auction today, how much do you think it would go for? And it's the fifth token ever on Super Rare. So the first 4 tokens on Super Rare were Robbie Barrett's. X copy is token 5 through, I think it's 18.
Yeah, it's actually Dead Earth. It was actually the first NFT I owned. I think it would sell for only $1 million.
Interesting. Why is that?
I just think that, first of all, it's a lot of money, right? And I just don't think people are that liquid. And also, X copy's brand, and everyone loves the character pieces.
Yeah.
So it's not a typical X copy, but it's a good one, obviously. So, what are you thinking, OG?
I don't.
Sorry, X copy. If that upset you, I didn't mean to.
No, don't worry. I'd be honored if X is listening. X is an interesting one. I think he has like such a cultish following within crypto. I'll be very curious to see how his work translates outside of like the more crypto dedicated art people. And as supply grows over time, but it's a very Bats.
It's a hard one, right?
That's a hard one.
I want to change my answer. If there's a lot of if there's a buildup of 3 months where people can get the money, there'll be more like 6.29.
And remember too, there's a period where you couldn't get your hands on X, but now there's like a lot.
Yeah.
Just did a fucking mint today that for these shadies. Have you seen?
You did a mint today? Another stealth mint?
Yeah, these gremlin shadies. I have a shady grifter, but I guess it was like you didn't get it for having the grifter. You had to win. And he put out obviously rare pass. I don't know. X is a harder one for me, Bats. I think super amazing, obviously, like the best selling crypto artist or whatever,
Yeah, X sets the tone. So X is sort of the space. It's almost like the trendsetter. He's the anomaly. I mean, think about it this way. One of ones have all suffered for all artists, myself included, but not for X. Well, not for X, but yes, for X copy.
I mean, he sold.
Yeah, they're in the millions, and now they're only in the 6 figures.
They're going. Look, they're now. What was the last one? 160, 139.
139. That's all.
They've been trending a bit.
Makes me feel better. I've only ever sold X copies when they were all-time highs. So that's sort of my policy. I have to have an all-time high that'll help the artist as well as me. And
I wish I could have that policy too. That sounds like if I could sell at all-time highs every time, I feel like that'd be great.
I know, right? Well, no,
yes, thanks, Pindar.
We're petty bunch. We get mad at each other when we. So I was always actually, before I sold each X copy, I would contact him and make sure it was cool. And he was always.
I know. This is really. I'll be interesting. We should look for sure in PFP. You can argue some of these the evidence has been that first matters.
Yeah, I agree.
Is where can we show where can we show in NFTs that first in art matters? So let's look at that for a minute. I mean, so Chrome squiggles were first art blocks, right? When was Fidenza? What was kind of first art? So first art on Super, you just went through Bats and there's no real evidence because there's the way it was ordered also seems like it was like 2 artists for the first 3 pieces, right?
Right.
So that's hard. There's no. I mean, on the other platforms, there's just not been as much secondary as on Super Rare. Typically, Foundation didn't have secondary.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is a good question. I'd like to see if there was some way to get data on it, Bats, but you're right. On the art side, it's not. I sort of jumped from the PFP. On the art side, it's not clear. I do think, too, probably, like you said with the X, look, people want the hits, and so the problem is usually the first piece. Now I've seen some artists, like they come right out the gate with a style. But most of them, you kind of bramble along a little, and then something hits, even a great
I'm a perfect example. I'm looking at my early work. And it doesn't have a strong visual style. The only thing that ties all my early work together is done by robots.
Yeah, robots and AI.
It took me a year and a half to realize I needed more than that. I needed two things done by robots, and it had to look killer, and it had to be immediately identifiable as part of my series. And I like what you said earlier about how, this new one, even like my new feedbacks that are coming out next year, are basically combining the first sparks of artificial creativity, my AI skulls and stuff painted by robots, with my bite GANs. And so it's like I have two lines right now. One is AI faces made with GANs, and the others are these these pixelated AI creations. And now they're combining. And it took me a year, 2 years to figure that out. And it was actually from watching artists like Xcopy and Hackatow and talking to them and like getting to know artists like Cody. And I just realized it just took a little while for it to click. It's like, these guys, you see a new Cody, you immediately know it's a Cody. You see a new Xcopy, you immediately know it's an Xcopy, or at least used to, but now everyone copies him. So sometimes you're like, is this a clone or is it the actual Xcopy? But the same with Hackatow.
They're evolving. Xcopy's evolving, it looks like to me, this more recent work.
Yes, he is.
Archer.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think?
But you can still tell. I mean, I made this point on a call last week, and I'll say it again. And this is back in the days when like 2021, and I remember this Beanie, who's very famous or infamous around here. He got in this big fight with Jerry Saltz online. They had it was like a back and forth, and Jerry Saltz is a very famous art critic for New Yorker, for those of you who don't know who he is. And
all of a sudden, NFTs matters now, I've heard. He's shut up.
What's that?
All of a sudden, he showed up in NFTs the last 2 months.
Yeah, he wanted to blast Rafiq Anadol's, installation at the MoMA, which made for interesting theater, but not much else, I don't think.
Yeah.
So Beanie and Jerry go back and forth, and I started talking with Patrick Amadon, who's an artist in this space, about it. And Patrick said something very interesting to me. He said, Jerry gave me some of the best advice I've ever had in my career, which was pick a style that you love and deviate from it, but not too far. And right. I thought that was really interesting. And to your point, Xcopy has put out some different work recently, but you can, from a mile away, still tell it's an Xcopy. Like I'm thinking about Sarah Zucker, Temporal on the Super Rare Pass. You can spot Sarah's work on that a mile away. You could spot Corey Van Loo's work a mile away. You can really Pindar's work, but none of it is really the exact same as the last piece. It's all evolved and different and, sort of changes it up, but you can really see the shades of that artist's signature in every piece. And that was when Patrick said that to me, I thought, you know what, that's actually brilliant advice. You don't have to. Artists can do whatever the hell they want. I'm just saying, that's generally how the market works.
Recognizable.
Yeah, complain though. Artists complain. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to do all this." They don't get this, that it's important. They say, I don't want to be stuck in one style. I want to experiment with my mood. But the counter to that, and I tell this to artists, which I'm advising, because with Sovereign, we do lots of drops with artists, is people want you to go deep into something.
Yeah.
And the deep, we don't want you doing 10 things shallow. We want you to go so deep into something, and to use Xcopy again, I see dystopian pixelated future where everything's digital and glitchy. And he's just going deeper and deeper and showing it deeper and deeper. And it's I love to Super Rare drop. It's he just went even more dystopian. And
Remnants, I think it was absolutely brilliant. I love that drop. I totally agree with you. I thought it was excellent. The one, there's some artists out there where I worry about though. I'm a huge Sam Spratt fan, for example. What is his chapter look like if he ever decides to deviate from Lucy, right? I mean, what does that look like? And I think he should. I think he should have every right in the world to go out and do that. And it'll be interesting to see if he ever does decide to do that. And there's many other artists. I don't want to, single out Sam, but like if he ever does decide to deviate from that, it's going to be really interesting and I think fun to watch. And there's ways you can do it here that you can't do it in the trad art world. For example, I have a friend, Larry Devoskin, who's on Super Air. He's an old-time music guy, and he just asked me, hey, I have this series of photographs. I'd like to put them on chain and just more for myself than making money. The guy doesn't need any money. Just, what should I do? And I encouraged him to do it as a series. You kind of wall it off from your own work that you're known for, but, it's a series of photographs that are special to him and are actually really good. And he decided that he wanted to put them on chain. I said, hey, you have this opportunity in Web3 to put it in a separate sort of bucket within your name, but it's sort of an quote unquote experimental type of thing. And I think here you definitely have the freedom to do that. The best I've ever seen do it is Ben Strauss. He's a photographer, landscape photographer. And then he did that incredible work with physics and the strobe lights and all that, which has nothing to do with landscape photography. And funny enough, those sales have been higher than what he's known for, which is landscape photography. So, he really pulled it off. And I spent a lot of time speaking with him about it beforehand, and he did it better than even what I advised him to do. So there's definitely room for experimentation out there.
Pats, he crushed that shit. I'm with you. And I'm with you on Sam. Sam will be interesting. I will tell you, I think we were talking before the call. Sam put words to my own experience better than I could have put, and I would love to see whatever he's inspired to do. I'm sure it would be amazing. But well, look, we're coming up on time. This has been such a joy. I don't know what happened to Artie. I guess he was on his phone. We lost him. I didn't get to say
he's riding his bike back across the United States.
Running this dude. After I saw him in Mac Deuces, we were in Mac Deuces at Dies, an Alien Queens event where people were smoking in the bar and it was vile, as Artie said. But this dude was drinking beers with me, and then he went and ran a 10K that afternoon. I mean, I bought him 2 beers at least. So it's not, I know he must have had 3 or 4 beers before the fucking run minimum. He's so super jacked. It's crazy.
I love it. I mean, it's impressive. I love it. I love how he does that.
Yeah, I was dying. I got sick of that fucking bar. Well, look, it's a total absolute joy. I really love today. Perfect time that my darkness came.
Perfect. That's the cue.
All hell's breaking loose, apparently.
There's actually someone with a chainsaw. He's been dogged.
I think he's going to tell him to stop just so we can say goodbye.
Oh, gosh.
Pindar, did you go to Art Basel?
No, I didn't. I didn't
either.
Paris. I did Marv. I'm going to do one. I'm like Artie. Artie mentioned having 4 kids. I have 4 kids as well. And as crazy as I am into Web3, I do save some times for my kids. So I have to. One international trip and 1 domestic trip I'll do for Web3 a year. That's what I've decided. I think Marfa or maybe NFT NYC. I don't know. I'm up for suggestions. And then Paris. And I would make an exception though, Bats, if there was an Asian trip. I'll take any opportunity to go to Asia for
Singapore has been up and coming, I think, and that seems to be where people are congregating. But
people went to the Korean.
I'm with you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, OG.
There was that Korean one. A lot of people went to the Korean.
Oh yeah, that looked fabulous. That looked really good.
I was in Tokyo a few weeks before. Okay, sorry about that. A few personal mishaps on today's call. But loved having you guys. Such a joy. I'm so excited to have had this today with you all.
I'm flattered you asked me. I really appreciate you being here, and Pindar is really, and Artie, if you're listening, we miss you, but it was great having sharing the stage with you, and Pindar is awesome to share the stage with you as well. Thank you, OG.
Much love, guys. We'll talk soon. Thanks again. MoneyNeverSleeps.
Cheers, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, great.
Oh, fuck.